Here we are, we're about to do another hive inspection. So this is Beekingham Castle, sorry, Beekingham Palace and Beeston Castle. So we're going to get in there, I'll hand the camera over to my husband and we'll do an inspection. Okay, so here we are about 6 weeks in from our initial install of these bees. First thing we noticed was these boards here, the originals, were too thin. So we have replaced them with thicker boards, and instead of painting them, we have used an epoxy timber sealer. Today's the first time we've put them in, but what we've noticed is we have a gap, which we shouldn't have. So what we're going to have to do is, in the short term, we're going to have to use this little board and actually slot it in to place to block the bees from coming out, which is a bit of a shame, but we've still got a little bit of this plywood that we can actually make a slightly wider panel than what we've currently got in place. So there's, well, that's a 7mm sheet, so we've probably got about a 9, maybe a 10mm gap there. So we'll just need to go and reconfigure that as our first step. So I've taken the table from the far end and I've brought it up this end just so I can work here at the time being. Just want to get this frame out and onto the frame holder. Oh, there's a fair bit of weight in that with nectar. Wow, that is laden with nectar. A lot of pollen and bee bread in there. So now we'll just put that on our little frame holders at the end, which gives me space. Then I can keep the majority of the hive under cover and just work 1 or 2 frames at a time. Again, that one is full of nectar. Could also be sugar syrup. I did feed them a little while ago, but there's no brood in there so far. So I'll just drag that one back. So as you can see, we're in spring build up at the moment. The population is thriving. Our queen is doing a great job. There's a lot of drone brood at the bottom of that frame, but the rest of it is pollen and nectar. Again, drone brood at the bottom of this one, and I can't really see any brood. This is just going to be a relatively quick inspection. Come on girls, get down. Get down. Good girls. Just going to move this across now and start working my way down the hive. Just like that, my table moves with me. These are my spring mite treatments that are in. Right, whoa, I think this was a good time to get in here. There's a lot of brood on this frame, and they are, you look on this side, it's a bit hard to see, but they are backfilling with nectar. So we need to give them a lot more space. I've bought some extra frames out today, so that's good. a sore shoulder. It's a bit hard reaching over. But again, that is full of brood, and again they're backfilling that nectar, so the queen is doing a sterling job. As you can see, the colony is thriving. There's a lot of bees, so we're just going to give them some more frames. We've moved the follower board down, we've made a heap of space. So we're just going to have a bit of a rejig, and because they're backfilling those brood frames, we absolutely don't want that. So I'm just going to move these frames down. I've given them 3 frames at this end. I'm going to give them 2 frames at that end. And I'm going to do a combination of undrawn comb and also drawn comb, just so that they can work on those and gives them something to do. We've also opened up the second entrance, so they now will have the whole hive to play in except for the Flow Hive area. There I'll get into them in another week or so, and again check for any swarm cells, do my main pest inspection for the year, so we have to submit a colony return for AFB. So I'll do a big check on my next inspection for that. Right, so they've now got the whole area, and when I put the frame that's hanging on the frame holder in here, this whole box now will be full, and the bees will have plenty of space. And I'd say give it a couple of weeks and I'll be giving them the super. Ow, she got me. Righty ho. Yeah, so that's pretty much us. There's a lot of bees in there. We've done a quick inspection. There is so much backfilling going on. I've actually just moved a couple of the empty undrawn frames on either side of the brood area, so they'll build it out hopefully and stop backfilling for the queen. So we're just going to package up the hive now and leave it be. So that's one thing we didn't consider. We put in bee escapes, but the bees are not overly tempted to escape, as we've noticed. They go for the vents and they sit on the inside of the vents, just sort of staring outside. But we do have a fair few bees here, so all we can do really is give it a quick smoke before we shut the lid. So husband's going to quickly smoke them all down, so any bees that are in there hopefully will go out as I pull down the lid. Oh god. So this is where the frame holder is. You can see where that frame's been hanging. So I'll start pulling this down. Paul, if you can just smoke this end bit. Just to try and get them down. I think it's just going to be one of those things that we're just going to have a certain number of fatalities every time we go in, unfortunately. Okay, so the lid is on. I've taken off the feeder, so they're just sort of clustering around there. Because I've disturbed them so much, they're all clustering there, but I've opened up the second entrance, and so hopefully they'll be figuring out their second entrance very shortly. You can see some of them already are, but that should relieve the pressure on the main entrance. So not too bad. The colony has expanded rapidly, hugely. So they now got 19 frames, and in a couple of weeks I'll come in and do the big inspection next week, and then in a couple of weeks I'll give them the flow supers to play with. Okay, one of my subscribers, Kenneth, requested some footage of the bees going in and out of the entrances. Excuse me. So this is the morning after the inspection on Beeston Castle. Don't know how well you can see it because of the shadows. They're bringing in a lot of different pollens, which is great. Both entrances are being utilised. The girls have got it sorted. So the bright yellow pollen that you might be able to see coming in, that's from the gorse. We've got gorse directly across the road. There's some very pale, almost white pollen. That is viburnum. I've got quite a few plants of that. And I've also got cherry blossom. We've got cherries in blossom at the moment. I'll show you some footage of them. The bees are loving those. So yeah, there's some bee footage for you for the morning. This is Beekingham Palace. This is a smaller hive, and also at this time of day it's still, the entrance of it is still in the shade. Sorry, the cat's come to join us, she always does. So yeah, these girls are a little bit quieter in here. Also a much smaller population anyway. But yep, they're certainly active. It's 17 degrees at the moment, so that's 62, 63 degrees Fahrenheit on a stunning Sunday morning. So my husband's on beekeeping duty today because after the sting I got yesterday on my finger, my whole hand is swollen up, so I can actually sort of struggling to bend my hand a bit. So we are going to do the full pest inspection on this hive today, which is going to be interesting, given that he's not really a beekeeper. So let me just blow those down for you, my dear. Now so far we've found 8 charged queen cups. I'm guessing that's another one there, but what we're doing is our AFB inspection that we have to do every year. So Paul's doing the shaking and I'm doing the checking. Between us we're getting through it. And as you can see though, the bees are not happy. So this is the aftermath of Beekingham Palace's hive inspection. Bees everywhere. It's when we're inspecting for AFB, it's a really thorough inspection of all of the brood. It's something we can't get around. It is a huge disturbance, but there's nothing we can do about that. What I am going to do now, we have given them all the extra frames, all the extra space in there. So I'm just going to open up this second entrance because I've now got the whole space of the inside except for the Flow Hive end. It's now 6 o'clock at night after doing that inspection today. And as you can see, the bees have settled down a lot. There's some using that newly opened entrance on the left. So in hindsight, what would we change with these hives? After working it today, again with my sore shoulder, we would possibly move the safety chain from the other end and put it at this Flow Hive end. Because the reality is you don't actually harvest from the Flow Hives that often, and that safety cable wouldn't actually get in the way, I don't think. Well, I know it wouldn't get in the way, so I think maybe moving it down here, down to this Flow Hive end would be a better idea. And I think that's entirely possible to do. So I think after watching me try and use it today, I think my husband will probably change that around. Going to the thicker panels, definitely. We don't know what happened with the maths there, still why one panel is just a little bit narrower than the others. But yeah, other than that, I think everything in it is going really well. Yeah, so for a prototype, they're actually doing pretty good. We'll see how they go through the whole season. And I guess the proof will be in the pudding this time next year once we've had them get through an entire year. And so we finished our hive inspection, but because it's a lovely spring day here, it's currently 17 degrees Celsius, so that's 62.5 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm using the opportunity to get the solar wax melter out there and just melting down some chunks of dirty wax that I had. And that's melting really nicely, so it'll clean up good. The solar wax melter has done its job. It melted the wax up to about there, so this is a 2 litre container, so I got just under 1.5 litres out of it. But what I've done is I've put it into little silicone cupcake moulds. My sister wants some beeswax to use to make balms and lotions and potions and other things. So yeah, they're not set yet. I've only just poured them in, but they've started to set at the top. But if I was to stick my finger through that, my finger would sink. But yeah, so you can see, because it's still quite soft there, my finger sunk into it. So I'll keep this wax, and 18 little wax cupcakes will go to my sister.